Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine avataravarishthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. So today we are beginning a discussion on the third school of Vedanta, that is Dvaita system of Madhvacharya. Now this Advaita, Visishta Dvaita and Dvaita, that is non-dualism and qualified non-dualism and dualism. These three systems of philosophy are the most dominant systems in Indian Vedantic tradition. Within the tradition of Vedanta, there are a few more other schools, like the system of Nimbarka, Vallabha, Chaitanya, and so on. But these three are the most important. So they are called Madhvacharya, the three fundamental schools of Vedanta. So the schools of Nimbarka, Vallabha, Chaitanya and others, they are also important, but we first focus on these three. So Madhvacharya's system is called Dvaita. So Dvaita, literally Dvaita means the belief in more than one reality. So that's the essence of Dvaita, more than one reality. Now, there are some basic similarities between Visishta Dvaita and Dvaita, and there are similarities between Advaita and Visishta Advaita. But Dvaita and Advaita are totally dissimilar. They are the polar opposites. So to give an idea of the time, the period in which these systems developed. The first one and the most dominant and till now the most influential system of philosophy is Advaita, which is what Swami Vivekananda taught in the world, taught in Western world. It was expounded originally by Shankaracharya, who lived between 778 and 810 AD. There is this other schools of historians who will tell you he lived between 788 and 820, 32 years. And the next important philosopher chronologically was Bhaskara. So he lived between Shankara's time and Ramanuja's time, about 9th century AD. Though Shankara lived in the 8th century, Bhaskara lived in this 9th century. The speciality of Dvaita system is, it is the most powerful reaction to the extreme idealism of Advaita. Actually, Madhvacharya emerged as a natural reaction to some of the extreme idealistic interpretations of Advaita texts by many Advaitins. He himself, of course, his time, he was born in the year 1238 AD and passed away in 1317. Madhvacharya's time. He was born in the southwest of India called the Karnataka state near Mangalore. And Shankaracharya was born further south in Kerala. And Ramanuja was born in the east coast of India, in the south, that is Tamil Nadu. So, as I was mentioning, Madhvacharya's system is called Dvaita, duality, is the exact opposite of Advaita. So he believes in what we call Panchabheda Siddhanta, which we'll describe very soon after some time. So he believed in duality and difference, and Shankaracharya lived in non-duality and non-difference. So the first reaction to Advaita came from Bhaskara, as I mentioned, he lived in the 9th century AD. So this reaction was a reaction to the extreme idealistic interpretation of many of the Advaitic texts, which in a way was represented a deviation, a departure from the all-accommodating, all-harmonizing system of Advaita philosophy, originally taught by Shankaracharya. So as I mentioned, in Shankara's system, there is a very wonderful harmony, an all-accommodating approach. But what happened was, after his passing away, some of his disciples or disciples' disciples started interpreting Advaita according to their own convictions. Sometimes they pushed the idea of the relativity of the world, Jagat, to a kind of negation of the world. To make it clear, for example, Jagat Mithyatum. Jagat is Mithya. Mithya actually means something which is not absolutely unreal, because we all experience it, but it is changing. And because it is changing, it doesn't remain the same without any change. It is only relative, so it is not absolutely real. To be absolutely real, it should be the same in the past, present and future, in the waking, dream and dreamless states. And that is only Brahman. Everything else in this world is relative, because they have an origin, they evolve, they grow, they decay and they disappear. So only relatively real, not absolutely real. This is the real meaning of the statement Jagat Mithya in Shankaracharya's philosophy. Now, this idea of the relativity of the world was pushed to the extreme of negation of the world. So you often find, even today, if you read many of the non-authentic articles written by the followers of Madhvacharya, also as Ramanuja, and also in modern writings, you find statements like this, that Shankaracharya said, the world is unreal, the world is a dream, which is actually very different from Shankara's original thesis. Shankaracharya doesn't say the world is a dream. He only says the world experiences are not eternal because they keep changing. What is in the past is not what is different now, and it will be different, still different tomorrow. That means it doesn't remain without any change, the past, present and future. All these I explained. Now this idea of Mithyatum, relativity, was totally misconstrued, misinterpreted and misrepresented. Even today you find in India and everywhere you find this terrible misunderstanding of Advaita. Now, Madhvacharya, historically speaking, was learning one important text, Ishtasiddhi, of Vimuktatman, a great follower of Shankaracharya. And he was learning this. At that time, he had some conflicts with his own teachers. And then he left. He had confrontations with his teachers, and then he decided to project his own thoughts, and he traveled in many parts of South India. He argued with Advaitins and Visishtadvaitins, and then he thought he should have his own system of philosophy. So he developed his own Dvaita Siddhanta, Madhva Siddhanta, or the school of dualism. So you have to remember the time outline. Shankara in the 8th century. Ramanuja Ramanuja was born in the 11th century, passed away in the early 12th century. So he was born sometime in 1017 and lived for 120 years and died in 1137 AD. And almost 100 years after the passing away of Ramanuja, Madhva was born in 1238. To be very precise, 101 years after the passing away of Ramanuja, Madhva was born. As I mentioned earlier, before Ramanuja, there was another philosopher, and his teachings are not very much studied seriously as an independent system. His ideas are frequently referred to, mentioned in many books, but it's not almost a forgotten chapter. Mentioned, but not as prominent as Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhva. His name is Bhaskara, I mentioned earlier. He believed in a kind of jnana karma samuchaya, bheda, abheda, which means unity and multiplicity. He accepted the unity of Brahman with Brahman and world and jivas are all same, but also they are different. Bheda means they are different. Abheda means they are non-different. It's kind of samuchayavada. It's called the idea of accepting both. So now, again, of course, there were others like Dvaita, Nimbarka also came. Now, coming to the next subject, just a few interesting things. It will make you understand the nature of Madhva system. It's very interesting. As you know that Shankaracharya taught that there is no basic distinction between jivas, individual souls, and Atman. That is Brahma Satyam, Jagad Mithya, Jivo Brahmaiva Napara. Jiva is Brahman itself. It doesn't mean that every person is God or Brahman, nothing. What it really implies is something totally different. What it means is, in essence, there is something in all of us which is not this physical body. It is not even the mind or emotions or feelings. Behind all this, behind the body, the senses, the mind and intellect, the memory system, behind all this and beyond all this, there is subtle spiritual spark, Atman, present in all of us. And that Atman is present everywhere. It's called Brahman, Atman, the same. Two words are used in two different contexts. As the inner essence, the indweller, it's called Antaryami, it's called Atman. As the essence of the universe, the origin of the universe, it's called Brahman. So remember, Shankaracharya did not say that we are all gods or anything. Sometimes we find very, very ridiculous, laughable interpretations and people make fun. It's not so. What he said was, in all of us, there is one spiritual reality. And that is same everywhere. That's what he said. Now, remember, this, for example, how these ideas can be totally misinterpreted. I'll give an example. Brahma Satyam Jagad Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Napara Aham Brahmasmi Tattvamasi. You can find the Mahavakyas. Aham Brahmasmi. I am the Brahman. It is a kind of anubhuti. It's not a statement. It is a kind of inner, you may call it mystical, spiritual experience. Jiva Brahmaikyam. That's the essence of it. Now, you can look at what Madhvacharya says about this. I shall quote him. Ghadayantihi rajano rajahamidi vadinaha tadha takhilamishtamcha sugunotkashavadinam. Sugunotkashavadinam. But you know what it means? For example, Madhvacharya says, if a servant or the guard, the security guard in a king's palace says, I am the king are the same, the king will drive him away from there, or maybe eat him. Ghatayantihi rajanaha, rajanaha ghatayantihi. Kings will beat them. So like that, if you say, I am Brahman, Brahman won't be amused. God will not be amused if you say, I am God. But that's not the essence of what Shankaracharya taught. What he taught was, within all of us, there is the one divine spark. So it's kind of spiritual oneness. Spiritual, that's a real point. Now in the Chandogya Upanishad, for example, in the 6th chapter, there is called Tattwamasi Mahavakya Vicharaka. Uddalaka is teaching his disciple and of course his son, Swetaketu. Both are, Swetaketu was the son whom he sent out for learning, but he became very arrogant. He had not learned the supreme spiritual truth. So Uddalaka asked him, did you learn that by knowing which everything becomes known? Swetaketu said, I don't know. So 16 khandas are there in Chandogya, 6th chapter. So 9 khandas onwards, khanda means a section of a chapter. There is a discussion of Tattwamasi. So first Uddalaka told Tattwamasi. His son did not understand. So Uddalaka had to teach him repeating the same statement 8 times with 8 different illustrations. Then only Swetaketu understood the true implication of Tattwamasi, which actually the instruction that will eventually take you to Aham Brahmasmi, that is in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So it is not an intellectual statement. For example, this is a book, this is a tree, this is a cup. It's not like that. It is a statement that you have to meditate, and as you evolve spiritually, you will realize the truth that there is one supreme spiritual reality present in everyone. It is not something at the physical level. It is the spiritual level. Now again, it is not a doctrine, it is not a dogma, it is a mystical inner intuitive experience which cannot be explained. Now, in Madhva system, I think Vyasatirtha Nyayamrita says, it is Atattwamasi. You are not that. So Tattwamasi Mahavakya literal meaning is that supreme truth, Atma, Atman that you are seeking, that is you yourself. Madhvacharya says, it is not you. So Madhvacharya put an akara before Tattwamasi. It makes it opposite. According to him, the relationship between jivas, individual souls, and God, Madhvacharya's God is Lord Vishnu, Sriman Narayana. That is his idea of Brahman or Atman. Supreme God is Sriman Narayana or Vishnu. So according to him, there cannot be any identity between God and jivas. Rather, God is the Swami, the master. Jivas are all servants. That's what he says. So that's why he says, making fun of this, he says, Ghadayanti Rajanaha. If a servant says, I am the king, suppose a king finds out that in his absence, the servant secretly sits on the throne and tells total stranger visitors, I am the real king. If the king finds out, he will beat him. That's what he says. Rajanaha, Rajanon hi ghatayanti. They may kill him even. Rajahamiti vadinaha. I am the king. Aham Brahmasmi. It's like saying, I'm the king. So in the system, Madhvacharya is credited with using some invectives also, That I think among the three acharyas, three teachers, Madhvacharya and some of his followers have the distinction of taking the liberty to use slightly unparliamentary language while referring to their rivals. This is very interesting. So we should fight with them. There are such statements. I mentioned this earlier, as we are going to find out. So Madhvacharya was a sincere devotee, but then so that's why he says, Tadatra Akhilamishtamcha Sugunotkashvadinam. So then how do you place a king? If you want to place a king, then you should always take a low profile and you should insist that you are not the king is somebody else. And the king finds out that you are keeping a low profile, you are slightly self-deprecating. If you are a humble, polite, soft-spoken servant, the king will bless him and the king will reward him. He will give him a lot of money. Like that, if jivas behave like obedient servants with a lot of devotion and humility and attribute all success to his master, the king, then the king out of his compassion will show him grace, and then he will become spiritually enlightened. This is Madhvacharya's view. Now that's so again talking about the differences, there is a well-known verse. Jiveshwara bhida chaiva, jadeshwara bhida tatha, jiva bhedo midhaschaiva, jiva bhida tatha, midhascha jadabhedoyam, prapancho bheda panchakaka, soyam satyo hi anadischa, sadischa nasamapniyat. That means the differences. That means the difference between Jiva and Ishvara. There is a difference between individual souls and God. And this difference is absolute, eternal, unchanging. That is very important. You can never be the same as God. Now this insistence and this emphasis on the difference between everything. So I believe, historically speaking, if you look at the evolution of Indian thought, especially Vedantic thought, from 8th century after the passing away of Shankaracharya in 810 or 820, depending upon his date of birth, 788 or 788, 32 years. So between that time and Madhvacharya's time, there must have been a number of dialectical arguments and confrontations between Advaitins and other philosophical systems. And due to this intellectual warfare, Advaitins must have overemphasized the idea of the reality of this world. And also they may have also overemphasized the concept of mithyatvam and maya. And as a result, not only that, still worse, they may have completely forgotten the great devotional philosophy that you find in Shankaracharya's works. So in these dialectical confrontations, the followers of Shankara, for example, Sureshwaracharya wrote Bhashyavartikam, Brihadaranya Upanishad Bhashyavartikam. That is actually a super commentary on Shankaracharya's commentary on Brihadaranya Upanishad, very large book, very deeply philosophical, which actually outlines and gives refutation of all the existing systems of philosophy of those times. Bhashyavartikam. And then around the same time, another well-known book was written by an elder contemporary of Shankaracharya, who was his disciple, but much older than Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya was a young man even when he died, only 32 years. Some of his disciples were almost double his age, twice as old as him. And one of them was Vajaspati Misra. And he wrote well-known book Bhamati Tika, which is very, very dialectical, very complex, highly dialectical, polemical work, philosophical work, which you can study only under a great teacher. Every word, every sentence is loaded with meaning and implications. So in all these books that's written during post-Shankarite time, written before Madhvacharya's birth, or before the birth of even Ramanuja, who was born in 1017. So that means almost 200 years before Madhva. So what happened, these works written during the post-Shankarite period by other Advaitins who followed Shankaracharya's footsteps, these works must have been highly polemical, appeared to be very, very disturbing to those who were traditional devotees, who did not pay much attention to higher philosophy. As a result of this, Bhaskaracharya wrote his book, that is his commentary on the Brahma Sutra. Now Bhaskara's teachings are not so much emphasized, not given much popularity. And then Ramanuja came, and then after that Madhvacharya came. See, for example, here there is a difference between Jivas and Ishvara, God and souls. And there is a difference between the world and Jiva. And there is a difference between the different worldly objects and Ishvara. And there is a difference between Jiva, and then there is a difference between different objects in the empirical world and Jiva. And then there are differences between different objects in this empirical world. I mean, in the Jada Jagat, there are different things. For example, if you apply Madhvacharya's system, he will tell you, every chair right now in front of me, there are 200 chairs in this hall, let's say. Each chair is different from each other chair. That's what he will say. If you have 1,000 wooden chairs, or maybe 1,000 mud cups, Madhvacharya will tell you, each is different from each other. And this difference is eternal, unchanging. So this is his view. So it is called Bheda Panchakam. It means 5 types of differences. Nacha nasham, na payatesha, nacha aso bhranti kalpitaka, kalpitasche nivarteda, nacha aso vinivartade. He says, and then this is not, this difference is not an imaginary concept. It is a real difference. Dvaita vidyate iti tasmat ajñāninām matam. Somebody who tells you that Dvaita is not real, Advaita is real, this is the view of ignorant people. Madhvacharya says, matam ki jñāninām edat matam tādam na vishnuna tasmat matramidi proktam paramu haridevatu. So he emphasizes this: Vishnu, Hari, Sriman Narayana is only God, no one else. So this is a very, very important philosophy of Madhvacharya. That means, according to him, there are 3 entities, that is Ishvara, Jagat, Jivas. Ishvara means God, Jagat, the empirical world, and Jivas, different living beings. And they are eternally different. That's what he says. And not only that, he doesn't stop there. He says, among these living beings, there are different categories. So, and here we are actually going to discuss something very interesting. Madhvacharya's system is the only philosophical system in Indian tradition which says that there are certain jivas who are eternal residents in hell. Even if they become devotees, even if they surrender themselves to God, they can never become enlightened. It's called Nitya Naraga Siddhanta, doctrine of eternal damnation. There is no other system. There are certain systems of philosophy, fringe groups, not prominent systems. In some Abrahamic traditions, when they believe certain people can never have liberation, but it's not so much emphasized or projected. It is not a fundamental category of their philosophical system. But in Madhvacharya's system, he says there are certain living beings who are eternally living in Naraga or hell. And they live in hell, again they are born as they suffer, enjoy and suffer, again they go back to hell and they again come back like that. Now, among there are three types of jivas. One is those who are Nitya Siddhas. So in the Madhva system there is a category Nitya Siddhas. They don't need any effort. They are never bound. They are always liberated. They are always enlightened. They are always in a state of the highest spiritual enlightenment. So give the list of Lakshmi Devi, etc. And also there are certain saints in the Puranic literature that he refers to. Madhvacharya's system is slightly different from other systems because he gives lot of importance to books like Mahabharata. In fact, many of his believers, his followers believe that he was the reincarnation of Hanuman, who was born at Bhima, and Bhima was a big wrestler in Mahabharata. And Madhvacharya himself was not adverse to using his muscle power in some of his debating events. It's very interesting. He's well known in that. If you read Madhvacharya's life, you find during his early years, he was a brilliant man, but he spent most of his time in wrestling, in swimming, in physical exertion, physical activities. He was a muscular person. He could eat lots of food at one stroke. So, but then eventually he proved himself to be a very brilliant student, and eventually he became a founder of a distinct philosophical system. So, then the second category, Devas, Rishis, you find in the Puranic literature, you find Narada, Shuka, and also some great celestial beings living in heaven. And they are also muktas, they are liberated. Certain exalted beings like Lakshmi Devi, according to him, they don't need any liberation because they're always Nitya Siddhas, they're spiritually enlightened all the time. So a lot of Puranic and mythical concepts have crept into Madhvacharya's system. That's because he gave a lot of importance to Puranic books, Mahabharata, and also it's believed that he wrote a short commentary on some Rigvedic mantras also. The third category, they are always bound. But some of them, of course, they can get enlightenment if they work hard, if they do spiritual disciplines, and through bhakti, through devotion to Vishnu, they can get spiritual enlightenment. But there are those who can never get enlightenment. They are always bound. And according to some of the later writings, you get hints that these this eternal residents of hell are mostly the demons, some of the demonic characters, some of the evil characters called demons, who are mentioned in the classics like Ramayana, Mahabharata and all that. They are always permanent residents in hell. Others who are bound, they can, through their devotion, they can get spiritual liberation. That's what he says. According to their karmas, they can accumulate punyas, their spiritual merits, and they can evolve. Now, one very strong point of Madhva's system that should be kept in mind. He strongly criticizes two basic concepts of Vedanta, that is Advaita Vedanta. One is, he strongly opposes the idea of Maya. And also strongly opposes the idea of Jagat Mithyatvam. The world is Mithya, the world is only relative. So, according to Madhvacharya, everything in this world and the world itself is as real as God himself. Also, the distinction and differences between different objects in this world and the differences between different jivas and the difference between jivas and God and different objects in the world and God and the difference between different objects in this world and jivas. All these are permanent states of differences. It's called Panchabheda Siddhanta, Bheda Panchakam. That means 5 kinds of eternal differences. This is one important thing. Secondly, he rejects Mithya. It's an important thing. So I can very well imagine those who have studied Advaita Vedanta. We already have almost 45 lectures in Advaita Vedanta. I can very easily imagine how can a system so diametrically opposed to Advaita, how could it flourish? So I mentioned, first of all, you should remember, these philosophical ideas were mostly based on certain important books that these teachers wrote during those days. So a teacher is supposed to write a commentary on the triple foundations called Prasthana Traya. Prasthana actually can mean a movement or also certain foundations. The triple foundations of Vedanta. First, the Vedic or Vedantic text, the Upanishads. Second, Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is very important because though it is just a fragment of Mahabharata, it contains all that the Upanishads taught. It's in a way condensation of the Upanishadic philosophy. And it is in a way commentary on the Upanishadic philosophy. Not only philosophy, it also outlines a method of practicing spiritual disciplines and how to realize the supreme truth. So, and then there is a third foundation, that is Brahma Sutras. How to logically take up important statements from the Upanishadic literature and how to logically analyze their implications and meaning and their interconnectedness and then interpret them. So Shankaracharya interpreted these statements, Vedic, Vedantic, Upanishadic statements according to Advaita. Ramanuja did that according to Visishtadvaita. Madhvacharya did that according to Dvaita. So very often, of course, there are statements, for example, in one of the Dvaita texts, they will tell you, in the evening sun, you are standing on one side, on one bank of the river. On the other bank of the river, there are trees and mountains and houses and maybe people walking and all that. So, when there is a dark cloud, when there is not enough light, everything appears to be
covered with some kind of darkness. You can't see anything. So you cannot distinguish one from the other. So you think everything is seen to be one concealed, semi-dark entity. You cannot distinguish a house from a tree. You cannot distinguish a human being from a electric post. You cannot distinguish a car from a truck. When you're looking at the other bank of the river, on the road different vehicles are moving, everything looks like one entity due to lack of enough light. Like that, Advaitins do not have real knowledge. They have only partial knowledge. So, like a dark cloud, there is ignorance in their mind. So they think everything is one, everything is the same. So, Madhvacharya is like a person who can see everything clearly when there is no dark cloud, is brilliant sun shining above. So you can easily tell one from the other. You can say this is a truck, this is a car, this is a tree, this is a house. You can say. From a distance you can see. So Dvaita is clear vision. Advaita is a clouded vision. This is how the Madhva system tells you. And again, there are certain interesting methods they used in their interpretation. In a way, it is true that Madhvacharya's system is a kind of devotional system of philosophy. But the point is, I know any student of Indian philosophy who may not have studied from a teacher for many years will have this question in their mind. How could Madhvacharya find so many mistakes in Advaita? So there are two approaches in Indian philosophy I mentioned earlier. One is, especially in Vedanta, the spiritual approach and the dialectical approach. These books were written as reactions to certain views, partial views, or maybe partial interpretations, sometimes inaccurate interpretations of certain systems of philosophy. As a result, Ramanuja came, Madhva came. Madhvacharya felt that Ramanuja was not strong enough to completely dismantle Advaita. Ramanuja's system accommodated some aspects of Advaita. It is called Visishtadvaitam. Ramanuja accepted Visishtaikyam. There is a degree of unity and oneness because God is present in everything as Antaryami. But at the same time, jivas are not the same. There is still a difference. In Madhva system, Vishnu or Sriman Narayana is the only Swatantra, what is called, independent. Everything and everyone in this world is non-independent. And they get their knowledge due to the grace of God, then they get spiritual liberation. In Ramanuja system, you get liberation through prapatti, through sharanagati, through self-surrender. In Madhvacharya system, you get spiritual enlightenment by the grace of God. So it is a kind of devotion system of philosophy, but the insistence on eternal damnation and also the idea that those who take a different view are heading to hell. Nachanayam prayatyesha nachasu bhrantikalpitaha. So, he says, for example, those who believe that they are the same as God, the Aham Brahmasmi, etc., they will perish. That's why mithascha jadabedhoya prapancho bheda panchakaka, etc. So, and again he says, there is Swatantra and Paratantra. These are two technical words used in Ramanuja system. Sorry, Madhva system. Ramanuja also used the word. Swatantra means independent. Shiva Narayana Vishnu is independent. Everything in this world, everyone in this world is dependent. So, we have to remember, Madhvacharya was a great philosopher and he was a great devotee. He installed, he was a spiritual person, no doubt. But then in Indian tradition, you can find different perspectives, different views. As you remember, it's not that those who don't know the timeline of Shankaracharya, Ramanujan, Madhva, Bhaskara, Nimbarka, Vallabha, Chaitanya and others, those who don't understand this timeline, they may sometimes imagine that these philosophers were living at the same time and fighting among each other. Not at all. There is a gap of almost 500 years, 600 years sometimes, between Shankaracharya and Madhvacharya. 400 years, 350 years between Shankaracharya and Ramanuja. So, in course of time, when one system of philosophy became lopsided in its interpretation and popularity, somebody else took a different view and he was free to write a book and popularize his teachings. In Madhvacharya system, there were great dialecticians and scholars. Actually, after Advaita, the largest number of scholars in the Vedantic Sampradaya came from Madhva system. Jayatirtha, Vaditirtha, Vyasatirtha, who wrote the well-known book Nyayamrita, and then it was followed by interpretations, Tarangini, Laghujantriga. There are many books, one after another, were written. But the most prominent post-Madhva scholar belonging to Dvaita Sampradaya was Vyasatirtha, who wrote Nyayamrita, in which he refuted many of the popular doctrines of Advaita, especially the 5 important definitions of Jagad Mithyatvam, the concept of the world being Mithya, that concept, those definitions of Mithyatvam, the concept of Mithya, given by many of the post-Shankarite Advaitins, they were refuted by Vyasatirtha in his well-known book. It's a very important dialectical masterpiece. It's called Nyayamritam, and it was refuted by a still greater dialectician belonging to Advaita tradition, Shankaracharya's follower, Madhusudana Saraswati, wrote Advaita Siddhi, where he defended the concepts of Mithyatvam and he countered the arguments of Vyasatirtha, who tried to refute these definitions of Mithyatvam. Those who are interested, you can say one is, the 5 definitions are very important in any important Vakyartha, very important discussion on Dvaita. These 5 definitions of Mithyatvam, Jagad Mithyatvam, are described. One is from Panchapadika of Padmapada. The second and third one are from Panchapadika Vivarana of Prakasatmedi. The fourth one is from Tattva is called Chitsugi by Chitsukacharya. Fifth one is from Anandabodha's Nyaya Deepavali. I already discussed this earlier. Those who are interested, you are most welcome to ask questions. I shall explain. Because if you go to that, it's highly dialectical. But I'd be happy to explain to the best of my ability if you want more explanation on these 5 pillars of the definitions of Mithyatvam, Jagad Mithyatvam. The concept that the world is unreal. Unreal in the sense it is not absolutely real. That's the real meaning of unreal. Not that the world is non-existent. That's a very serious misunderstanding. Even Madhvacharya shows that he totally misunderstood. Ramanuja still misunderstood. So, Shankaracharya's concept of Mithyatvam is something very interesting. That is something very mind-boggling. How could they all so easily misunderstand and misrepresent these great definitions of Mithyatvam in Panchapadika, Vivarana and Vivarana Prameya Sangraha, and also Nyaya Deepavali. Anyway, those who are interested, a little bit of, wonderful dialectical intellectual exercise, I will be happy to discuss those definitions. Because we all study this, memorize, so everything is ready anytime. Thank you, namaskar. Most welcome. You are welcome for questions. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj. While waiting to see hands up, I have this wonderful image of Madhvacharya as a young athlete ready to wrestle.
No,
And,
he lived a very long life. He was not young, compared to Shankaracharya. Any of them could have been Shankaracharya's great-grandfather because they were so old. Madhvacharya was born 1238, died in 1317. So you can imagine, he was relatively led a long life. And Ramanuja 120 years. So many of these acharyas lived to the almost, at least some of them very close to 100 years, 120 years in the case of Ramanuja. So Shankaracharya could have been a grandson of any of them. That's a very interesting discussion. We are most welcome to ask questions. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj. I have questions of my own, but I will yield to the other hands
Yeah.
up that I see. Shay Celix is the first.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
First, thank you for the lecture, and specifically thank you for sharing these other traditions, which are different from your own. It's very interesting to hear these other traditions. So, my question is, what is the context in which these other Vedanta traditions, which were responses to Dvaita, all came from the Vaishnava tradition? So, Ramanuja and Madhva, and then also, I think,
Nimbarka, Vallabha, Chaitanya,
and Chaitanya, they all came from the Vaishnava tradition, while Advaita seems like there's different, Ramakrishna's Shakti tradition. So, what's the context behind those responses specifically all coming from Vaishnava tradition? Thank you.
Yeah, there was one Abhinava Gupta. He was not a Vaishnavite, he was belonging to the Tantra tradition, some of them Shaiva tradition. That is true. One reason is these provinces where these Vaishnava saints were born, like Ramanuja, Madhva, those provinces, those areas of India were well known for strong bhakti traditions, Vaishnava traditions. So they must have felt offended when these Advaita texts were spreading. Remember, even now, if you go to India, even the traditional circles, Advaita is popular by default. Not that everyone who talks about Advaita actually studied Advaita. It's a very important thing. So, because there is a special attraction for a system of philosophy, it talks about oneness and unity and then all-accommodating spirit, and also the idea that you need not surrender your freedom to a God. You are yourself capable of spiritual enlightenment if you get back to your own true nature, because we are essentially divine. If we live a pure life, karma yoga, mental purity, emotional purity, eventually we'll be able to realize that transcendental purity within ourselves. So this idea always have a special attraction. That's why Swami Vivekananda, when he came to this country, he projected Advaita. But Vivekananda was a great devotee. And he did not even project Sri Ramakrishna, his own guru. So when he went back to India, some of his own
brother disciples of Sri Ramakrishna questioned him, why did you emphasize so much of this Advaita, Vedanta? So he said, if you just bring another saint, another devotional tradition to a country where they have their own spiritual devotional traditions of Christianity, Christian mysticism, they will think, oh, just like our, nothing special in that. But when you bring Advaita, suddenly you find learned Americans or Europeans like Sister Nivedita, they were all drawn because there was something absolutely astounding, so universal, so all accommodating, and based on the concept of spiritual freedom. The freedom for yourself. See, both Ramanuja and Madhva and all other Vaishnava systems, there is an element of dependence, your dependence on the higher and a monotheistic Godhead. But in Advaita, it goes beyond that, the dependence. So it's a search for spiritual freedom. That element must have attracted many people. So I think that's why it became so popular. But we should also remember that there were natural reactions. If you overemphasize on the dialectical, idealistic things without giving any importance to the realistic concepts, there will be always a reaction. So that's what really happened.
Thank you, Maharaj. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Shay. I guess that completed that.
If you want, I can explain further, Shay, if you want more explanation.
Shay, are you still there?
Yeah.
No, that's good. I appreciated that answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we get to the next question, I had a follow-up on Shay's, thematically tied, and that is that when in theological studies today, are these multiplicity of systems generally taught and discussed at the same time, or is that maybe more out of the academy and something that we're treated to here that's special?
Out of the academy means, could you repeat your question once more, Bobby?
Well, if you're a specialist theologian, are you necessarily going to be exposed to these three major systems altogether, or is that more the bird's eye view that we're getting because of what we're experiencing here from your tutelage?
Yeah. So one point should be noted. If you study any non-Advaitic system, there is always a chance that you may cling to your own system to the exclusion of everything else. You may study others, but only as a concession. That's a problem with the so-called all these Vaishnava systems. See, Vaishnava system is absolutely magnificent, but sometimes an element of fanaticism can creep in under the guise of devotion.
That's what I was. Yes.
Yeah, that's a problem. So I feel every religion at some point, in some advanced stage, can understand Advaita, can connect with Advaita, the Advaitic ideal in every religion. May not be, it cannot be found in the fundamental canonical works, but it can always be found in the writings of the great mystics who went beyond the restraints of hierarchy and canonical works. So so if you are for example, if you are reading the mystical works of a Christian saint like Saint John of Arc or Saint Teresa of Avila, anyone for the matter, or in any Jewish or Buddhist tradition, obviously, at some point of the spiritual evolution, they
start talking in the language of Advaita. But that will frequently be in conflict with the received interpretation of the canon. The hierarchy was very strong in restraining any attempt to go beyond, to transcend the canonical hierarchy. In India, it was different. No one was persecuted for being a Vaishnava or Shakta or Antadvaiti. At the most, they may have a debate. That's all. A strong argument. And for all of them, Shankaracharya uses very polite language, very cordial. Ramanuja also more or less, though there are places where in the Ramanuja system there are, but Madhvacharya was slightly more aggressive compared to, not entirely adverse to using his own muscular power the intellectual, as in the dialectical field, not the physical field. So slightly more emphasizing the uniqueness of his system. Shankaracharya implied through his dialectical arguments. Madhvacharya, on the other hand, sometimes you find this, for example, Tattwamasi interprets Atattvamasi. You can imagine. Obviously, it is solipsism. It's absolutely, it is a violation. But then, grammatically, you can justify, because Atma tasatyam sa Atma Tattwamasi. So, Atma is a long agara. It can be linked to Tattwamasi, so it can be Atattwamasi. Grammatically, there is a point, you can defend it. But obviously, it is certainly a deviation from the intended meaning. So, but then, Madhvacharya also was a great devotee. He also had his own divine power. He was also a great tapasvi, no doubt about it. Ramanuja, all of them.
Thank you, Maharaj. And
Yeah.
thank you for the privilege of jumping in with that follow-up. And thank you for your patience. C. Gopinath, who has the next question.
Yeah.
Pranam Swamiji.
Yeah.
In today's lecture, you pointed out briefly how Shankara, Ramanuja, and Madhvacharya, all three are from the south in India.
Yeah.
And generally, you find both Advaita and Dvaita is more commonly known and commented upon and spread in the rest of the country. But you don't see Vishishta Dvaita much elsewhere apart from south.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say that Vishishta Dvaita stayed in the southern part of the country and didn't spread much?
Yeah, Ramanuja did inspire many devotees in Vrindavan, and also some of the saints living in Maharashtra and elsewhere. And then Madhvacharya's system is certainly not as widespread as Advaita. But Madhvacharya's system became an important factor in influencing the school of Achintya Bheda of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sometimes they refuse to acknowledge, sometimes they do acknowledge. But there is no doubt that Chaitanya's system of Achintya Bheda is close link to Madhvacharya's Dvaita Siddhanta. Otherwise, you don't find many great students of Madhvacharya's works in the north. Very rarely. Not many. In Vrindavan and other places, you find people studying Ramanuja's books, but not Madhva books. Advaita is studied everywhere. Everywhere. There is nowhere in India where Advaita is not popular, not studied. So, I think Madhvacharya's system, as you mentioned, frequently you find it mentioned in the writings and in the works of Chaitanya's school of philosophy, because it is more closely linked to Madhva system, Madhva Siddhanta, than Ramanuja Siddhanta, no doubt. So, on the other hand, you find writings, for example, Kabir Das and some of the saints of Maharashtra and Gujarat, there are views among scholars that they draw the inspiration from Ramanuja's system. So, okay, that's it. But one point is there, the largest number of scholars and dialecticians came from Dvaita Siddhanta after Advaita. Advaita, of course, produced the largest number. From all over India, Advaita scholars came. But the initial stage between about 13th century and 16th century, almost 300 years, the dialectical confrontations between some of the post-Shankarite Advaitins, some of whom lived before Madhva, like Sureshwara, Vajaspati, all lived before Madhva. And even those who lived later, see, for example, Sikha Sahu wrote Khandhagadya, Tattva with the author of Chitsuki, Nyaya Deepavali Ananda Bodha, Prakashatman, who wrote Vedanta Siddhanta Muktavali, not Prakashatma Yedi, who is the author of Panchapadya Vivarana. So, on the one hand, and of course Madhusudana, that the climax of Advaitic dialecticism. The polemism and dialecticism in Advaita tradition reaches its climax with Madhusudana's Advaita Siddhi. So, on the one hand, and from the Dvaitin side, you find Jayatirtha, Vadatirtha, Vyasatirtha, and many others emerging. So, and those who wrote Madhvacharya, Trivikrama Pantita, many of them came from Madhva tradition. In Ramanuja's system, there were not many dialecticians of this caliber after the time of Vedanta Deshika. Vedanta Deshika and Sudarshana Suri, who wrote Suti Prakasha is a commentary on Ramanuja's Sribhashya. After that, there were not too many high-profile dialecticians and scholars from Ramanuja's system who can be compared with the great Advaitins or the great Dvaitins who lived at that time. But in the Advaitic tradition, you find a new trend. For example, if you read the works of some of the modern exponents of Vedanta, not only Swami Vivekananda, even those who followed Vivekananda, Swami Chinmayananda, in one way he was continuing the tradition of Vivekananda, or Swami Shivananda of Rishikesh, who didn't belong to Ramakrishna mission, and many others. They were all one way or other following the footsteps of Shankara and not of Madhva of Ramanuja. Nobody will feel amused if he taught a system of philosophy which believes in the concept of eternal damnation. It's not entirely a very pleasing concept, no? It's not a very enjoyable state to be a permanent, to have a residential, to have your identity in hell, Nitya Naraga Siddhanta, Nitya Samsarin, So
but nobody wants to be in that. Nobody wants to be in that category. Pointing the finger outward might be a little easier.
So I had here in Vedanta Society San Francisco, Swami Prabodhanandaji actually belonged to traditionally belonged to a family which must have followed Madhva Siddhanta. I had talked to him. He was not entirely using a very complimentary language in his views of Madhva Siddhanta, though he actually belonged to a family traditionally Madhvas. So there's at least they move beyond that. Some of them do reach Advaita, some of them come up to Vishuddha Advaita. But no, I don't think anybody would enjoy remaining into that. But remember, we should always respect all these acharyas, all these great teachers. So the social circumstances, the intellectual climate and the circumstances of intellectual environment in which they lived. And remember, they were not what we call populist or popular. I mean, only small number of extremely well educated Sanskrit speakers, Sanskrit writers, they wrote books one after another. So in a way, it was not a popular movement as somebody could very well imagine living this 21st century. It was confined to a small number of Sanskrit speaking, Sanskrit knowing pandits and scholars, both monks and also householders. That's the idea. Okay.
Okay, I saw the signal of satisfaction from Sri C. Gopinath. So
Thank you.
I'll move now to David's question.
Yeah, David. Yeah.
Hello, Swami.
Yeah.
I have a question, but just following up on what you said, the hundreds of millions of Christians believe that there are some who will go eternally to hell and damnation.
Yeah.
In the West, it's a the most popular view. The Indians are a little bit more logical, but I had a question.
At least they don't articulate it so openly, do they?
Oh, yes, very much. Oh, it's a big deal. Big deal.
Yeah, unfortunately. I think Christ would have totally disowned them, I believe.
Yes, well, he wasn't even a Christian.
Yeah.
They in fact, if they're family members, if somebody is one of those conservative Christians and they have a family member who doesn't embrace Christ, they're very, very concerned because they know that person is going to eternal damnation.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, I tell you something interesting. You see, but the point is, it doesn't go very deep into them. I tell you something interesting. In today's India, all these great followers of Madhvacharya are wonderful humanists. Their monks are wonderful people, very devoted. They do a lot of charity, wonderful work. So, I think it is just a belief system which doesn't lie very deeply on their shoulders these days. I don't know about these evangelicals who are, even in India they use certain language, some certain words which are not very complimentary when they talk about other religious traditions, So anyway, I don't think they are doing a good service to Jesus Christ. I think it's the result of what happened, in a way, Gibbon, in the decline of Roman Empire, decline and fall of Roman Empire, Gibbon, Edward Gibbon, the British historian, he says Christianity was Romanized when Constantine became the emperor. He imposed Christianity as a national religion and entire Roman Empire, which actually became Christendom in course of time. So, a little bit of the ruthless Roman authoritarian attitude, dictatorial attitude, it must have crept into the interpretations of later Christian theologians, even including Augustine, Aquinas. The strong, the Roman law, the enforcement of Roman tyranny among the hapless people. That's a legacy that the church for centuries carried on for a long time. So there lies the clue. I don't think Christ would have had anything to do with this kind of ruthless, tyrannical attitude. Absolutely no. Christ was a very wonderful human being. A great humanist. So it's incompatible, these two concepts, the real Christ and this concept of eternal damnation. I don't think so.
Swami,
St. Paul's letters. St. Paul's letters also contain certain things, but he was a Roman citizen. He was not a Jewish rabbi. He was a Roman citizen. A Roman citizen will always have the mark of the imperial Rome. The ruthless, the reckless, who enforces his principle on everyone. So St. Paul was a convert, became a convert, but then he was carrying a lot of his Roman legacy, the legacy of being a Roman citizen, That's an idea behind.
Swami Seshananda used to say that the problem was that Paul became the main purveyor of Christianity, but he had never met Jesus, and Jesus was an Advaitin, and therefore, it became Paulianity instead of Christianity.
He was, if I use the word, he hijacked real Christianity, that may not be totally incorrect, but people may not like that kind of language. So, it's true, there is so much of humanism in Christ, so much of universality, and so much of kindness and compassion, and there is so much of harshness in St. Paul's letters to Corinthians, to Grecians, to Romans, and not entirely very pleasant reading. Yeah.
Then later also, Martin Luther, he was extremely cruel.
Extreme.
He was
extreme.
But I had a question for you, Swami. Is there a sadhana in Madhvacharya's system?
Oh, yeah.
What would be the sadhana?
No, service to temple and reading and then devotional music. All these are, we are going to discuss that in course of time. Madhvacharya, there's a great temple in Udupi which is associated with Madhvacharya. I visited recently, about 1.5 months ago. It's a great temple. Made the wonderful stories are associated with that temple. It's a Krishna temple. So, Madhva system also produced many saints, many scholars. Remember the harshness of this concept of eternal damnation. It doesn't lie very heavily on their tradition today or any time. But when we discuss this and also compare this with Advaita, you can see the difference. In Advaita, there is so much of universality, which you don't find at a dogmatic level in Dvaita. But many of them are wonderful human beings. They never practiced any kind of violence against anyone, persecution, nothing. They were great devotees of Lord Krishna. Did puja, writing books and devotional songs, that's all. Okay? Yeah.
Fortunately, our friend David is from the Oregonian Empire and not the Roman Empire. Thank you, David. And next question is from Sriram.
Yeah.
One small technical question.
Yeah.
Madhvacharya is short Madhva. The follower of Madhvacharya is Madhva. Is that correct, Swamiji?
See, Madhva, the word Madhva means anything related to Madhvacharya or Madhva. So Madhva Siddhanta means Siddhanta which is Madhva, which is related to Madhva. Madhvas can be used as a plural, those who are followers of Madhvacharya, in that sense.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Yeah.
A quick question from me, Maharaj.
Yeah.
In the discussion early on about Bhaskara-charya, you referenced Veda, Abeda.
Yeah.
And is that Bhaskara-charya's take on Mithya?
Bhaskaracharya did not accept the concept of Mithya. The main difference, the main concept of Bhaskaracharya was, he believed that both unity, both the Advaitic concept of unity and oneness, and also non-Advaitic concept of multiplicity, both are real, both are acceptable. So it's called Bheda, Abheda Siddhanta. Bheda means different. If there are too many realities, there will be difference. But at the same time, he also believed in some kind of unity. So most probably due to the emergence of Ramanuja's system, immediately after Bhaskaracharya's system became somewhat less prevalent and was not very popular.
I see. So this was foundational for what followed later.
Yeah. Bhaskara appeared before Ramanuja and after Shankara.
Yes. And before Madhvacharya.
And before, certainly, Madhvacharya came after Ramanuja.
Right.
See, Madhvacharya was born almost 101 years after the passing away of Ramanuja. Ramanuja passed away, he died in 1137. Madhvacharya was born in 1238. And
Right.
Bhaskara lived in the 9th century.
Right. So in a way, Bhaskara Charya paves the way for Madhvacharya. Both of them.
Yeah,
Both
maybe.
the,
It could be true. Yeah, that's true. The first reaction opposing or differing from Advaita tradition came from Bhaskara. Before Ramanuja and before Madhva. That's the idea.
I see. Thank you.
But his system did not produce a group, a cult. Ramanuja's system produced this, what you call sampradaya, a cult, a following. Madhvacharya's system also produced a following. But Bhaskara did not have a specific following. So that's why. So thank you. We had a wonderful session and we began a new session. We will continue this discussion. Thank you. Namaskar. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Pranamastu.